Hi, my name is Emma. I'm 29, and for the last decade I've been living a life that I thought was meant for me. I had my dream job, my close friends, and an apartment I loved in the heart of the city. But there was always a piece of me that remained empty, a part of me that had been waiting for something for him. It's strange how time can simultaneously feel like both an enemy and a friend. It had been 10 years since Nathan left. 10 long years. And yet, the memories of us together felt as vivid as if it had all just happened yesterday. I could still remember the way his laugh used to fill the room, the warmth in his eyes when he looked at me, the way he gently squeezed my hand as if to remind me that we were in this together. We had been young, carefree, and full of dreams. College life had been exciting, full of possibilities, and when Nathan and I met, it felt like fate. It was. That kind of connection, instant, effortless, like two puzzle pieces finally snapping into place. Our friends joked that we were the perfect match, and to me, it felt true. I had no doubt that we would go on to build a life together, that we'd grow old side by side. But then came graduation. Nathan had received an incredible job offer in another city, while I, a recent graduate in marketing, found an opportunity in my hometown. We promised each other that the distance wouldn't matter, that we would make it work. After all, our relationship had always been full of promise. We would visit each other during the weekends, talk on the phone every day, and send messages late into the night, always reassuring each other that we would make it work. But slowly, things began to change. The late-night calls turned into brief conversations, and the weekend visits became less frequent. Nathan was busy with his new job, and I was doing my best to establish my own career. But as the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, I could feel him slipping away. He became distant, the promises he had made fading into nothingness. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, but it hurt in a quiet, insidious way. Eventually, the phone calls stopped altogether. I would send him messages, checking in, asking how things were going, but there was no response. My heart would ache with every unanswered message. Every time I tried to reach out, the silence seemed to grow louder, until one day, Nathan was no longer a part of my life. I kept telling myself that I was strong, that I was fine. I told myself that I was moving on, that I didn't need him. But every time I saw a couple in the park, or heard a love song on the radio, the weight of that loss would come crashing down on me. I had been left behind, and I couldn't understand why. How could he just walk away without even a goodbye? I stopped talking about Nathan to my friends. It became too painful. I had friends who tried to comfort me, who tried to reassure me that it was his loss, that I was better off without someone who couldn't appreciate me. But no one truly understood what it felt like to be on the other side of a broken promise. The promise of a future that would never come. And so, I lived. I threw myself into my work, focusing on building a career that was fulfilling, but never enough to fill the emptiness that Nathan had left. I dated other people, went on casual dates, had flings, but none of them could measure up to what I had once had with Nathan. Deep down, I was still holding on to the hope that one day he would come back and things would pick up where we had left off. But as the years passed, I realized that the hope was fading, that Nathan was never coming back. I began to tell myself that I was moving on. I bought a new apartment, decorated it, and tried to make it feel like home. I made new friends, joined a yoga class, even took up painting as a hobby. I learned to live without Nathan in my life, even though there was always a small corner of my heart that still held space for him. Every now and then, I would see a photo of him on social media, always looking happy, always with a new group of people, and my heart would break again. But I never reached out. I never allowed myself to hope for something that had already slipped through my fingers. I had convinced myself that I had moved on. I had convinced myself that I was fine, that I was happy. But the truth is, I never stopped loving him. I never stopped wondering what could have been. And deep down, I knew that no matter how much time passed, I would never be able to fully let him go. It wasn't until the unexpected happened that I began to confront the truth of what I had been living for all these years. One Tuesday afternoon, as I sat at my desk going through some proposals for work, I got an email that made my heart stop. It was an invite to a networking event from a new senior manager in the firm, someone who had joined recently. His name was Nathan Coldot. It wasn't unusual to receive invitations like this. Something about the name caught my attention. Froze, staring at the screen as my heartbeat quickened. Could it be? Was it possible that this was the Nathan I had once known? I opened the email, my hands shaking as I read the message. The invitation was short and to the point. I'd love for you to attend a special event this week. It's a great opportunity to connect with the team, and I'd be happy to reconnect if you can make it. The email came with a business card attached, and as I clicked on the attachment, my eyes locked on the familiar face that stared back at me from the card. It was Nathan, the Nathan I had loved, the one who had walked out of my life a decade ago. And now he was here, in my world again. My head was spinning as I tried to process the realization. It wasn't just the fact that Nathan was back in town. It was the way his name appeared on that card. The fact that he was working at my company. The fact that we might actually cross paths again after all this time. My mind raced with questions. Why had he come back? Had he been thinking about me all these years? Did he regret what had happened between us? But as quickly as the questions came, doubt crept in. I had spent years convincing myself that I was better off without him, that it wasn't meant to be. Yet, now that he was back, I felt a flood of emotions: old love, old hurt, and a hope that I had buried so deeply that I had forgotten it even existed. I immediately replied to the email, agreeing to attend the event. The truth was, I had no idea what I would say to him if I saw him, but I couldn't ignore the need to finally understand what had happened. Why had he left me all those years ago? Was he the same person I had loved so deeply? Or had he changed in ways I couldn't recognize? The night of the event arrived, and I found myself standing in front of the venue, feeling as if my heart was about to leap out of my chest. It wasn't just the anxiety of reconnecting with Nathan. It was the weight of all those lost years. The years I had spent waiting, hoping, and moving on, only to find myself standing at this crossroads, not knowing where the road would lead. Little did I know, the answers I was searching for were about to come crashing into my life, shattering everything I thought I knew. The evening of the networking event arrived, and I found myself standing in front of the venue, my hands trembling slightly as I adjusted my dress and ran my fingers through my hair. The nerves gnawed at me. This wasn't just any work event. This was more than that. This was my past staring me in the face. A ghost I thought I had buried. I hadn't seen Nathan in 10 years, and now, here I was, about to face the person who had once been everything to me. I had been living a quiet life for so long, focused on my career, surrounded by friends, but always with a lingering emptiness where Nathan used to be. I told myself it was for the best, that moving on was the right choice. Yet, with each passing year, there was always a flicker of hope in the back of my mind, a hope that one day he would return and things would fall into place again. But now that hope felt foolish. The reality was more complicated than that. The venue was upscale, with sleek, modern decor that contrasted sharply with the emotions I was feeling. As I walked through the doors, I immediately spotted Nathan. He was across the room, laughing with a group of colleagues, and even from this distance, I could feel the pull of his presence. His face was older now, but still unmistakably Nathan knows. Same deep blue eyes, the confident yet easygoing demeanor. He was talking to a group, clearly enjoying the moment, and for a brief second, I hesitated. Part of me wanted to turn around and walk out. I hadn't prepared myself for this. How could I? 10 years of silence, of unanswered questions, of endless wondering about where he had gone and what had happened between us. All of it had been building up to this one moment. Was it a mistake to be here? But before I could decide what to do, someone tapped me on the shoulder, interrupting my thoughts. "Emma, so glad you could make it." A familiar voice greeted me, pulling me out of my reverie. It was Carol, a colleague from work, who had helped organize the event. "Hey, Carol," I managed to smile, trying to mask the storm brewing inside me. She led me into the crowd, and I followed numbly, unable to take my eyes off Nathan. I tried to focus on Carol's small talk, but my thoughts were consumed by him. How had he changed? Why had he come back now? And then, as if fate were pulling the strings, I found myself standing just a few feet away from Nathan. Our eyes met for the briefest of moments, and everything inside me froze. I wasn't prepared for this, for the flood of emotions that rushed. In all at once, memories, hurt, longing, all crashing into me like a wave. I opened my mouth to say something, but words didn't come. Nathan, on the other hand, didn't look like he had any trouble finding his voice. His expression softened and he smiled, his eyes brightening as if he too had felt the weight of our past hanging between us. "Emma," he said softly, stepping forward, his voice warm and familiar. "I didn't expect to see you here tonight." There was a note of surprise in his voice, but it was mixed with something else, something that felt like longing, like a piece of him had been waiting for this moment too. I wasn't sure what to expect either," I replied, feeling the awkwardness settle between us like an invisible barrier. I wanted to ask him where he had been all these years, but instead, I found myself stuck in the silence, struggling to breathe. The years had not made the past go away. They had only buried it deeper, and now it was rising to the surface again. He reached out, his hand brushing mine lightly as he gave me a half-smile. "It's good to see you, Emma," he said, his voice genuine yet uncertain. "I thought about you a lot over the years." I swallowed, fighting back the wave of emotion threatening to spill out. I didn't think you'd ever come back," I managed to say, the words feeling heavier than I intended. It felt like everything I had suppressed for years was suddenly breaking through, and I had no control over it. Nathan's expression faltered for a moment, and I noticed a flicker of pain in his eyes. He opened his mouth to say something, but before he could, one of his colleagues approached us, pulling him away from the conversation. "I'm sorry, Emma," he said quickly, glancing at the colleague. "I need to catch up with a few people." "We'll talk more later?" I nodded, my mind racing. Of course, we would talk more later. How could I not? This was Nathan, the man who had promised me the world, who had been the center of my universe. But now, here he was, standing before me, a man who had chosen a different life. I couldn't ignore the fact that he had moved on. He had built a life without me, and now he was back, like it was nothing. I stood there for a moment, watching him as he walked away, his attention already shifting to others in the room. It stung in a way that I couldn't explain. We had been so close once. We had talked about everything, our future, our dreams. And yet, here he was, standing in front of me like a stranger, his smile a mask, and his promises now just a distant memory. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I spoke to colleagues, made small talk, smiled and nodded, but I could never shake the feeling of Nathan's absence. He was there, but he wasn't really there with me. We were two people living parallel lives that had once been intertwined, that had since drifted apart. Later that night, as I stood by the window in my apartment, staring out at the city lights, the flood of memories came rushing back. I remembered the late-night conversations we used to have, the plans we made, the future we talked about building together. But most of all, I remembered the promises that Nathan had made to me, promises that I had waited 10 years to hear again. But now I had my answer. Nathan wasn't the same person I had once known, and I wasn't the same person I had been when he left. The love I had for him was still there, buried deep inside me, but I was no longer the same woman who had waited for him. Time had changed me, just as it had changed him. And as much as it hurt to admit it, I realized that what we had was gone. What Nathan had left behind was something I could never get back. I knew then that I had to let go, not just of the love I once had for him, but of the hope that things could ever go back to what they were. Nathan was married to his life now, and as much as I had waited for him, it was time for me to stop waiting. Conclusion of Part 2. The reality of the situation set in over the next few days. I had seen Nathan again, heard his voice, and felt the remnants of a love I couldn't revive. But it was clear now. We were two different people. The time that had passed between us had shaped us both into people who were no longer meant for each other. It was painful, but it was the truth. I needed to face it. I needed to stop living in the past and start living in the present. It was time to find my own path forward, one where I didn't rely on someone else to define who I was. Nathan had his life, and I had mine. It was time to rebuild. Time to let go. And though it hurt more than anything I had ever felt, I knew deep down that it was the only way to truly move on.